नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Om. Dear friends, welcome to the study of Mahabharata. We just completed the introduction and also a brief summary in the last 4 episodes. In the first 4 episodes we have completed. In the first episode I talked about, I gave an introduction. The next 3 episodes I gave a summary of Mahabharata. Now we will just get into the text, because without much delay we will just get into the text. And before getting into the text, I just wanted to tell about 2 statements which are made by sage Vyasa in the very beginning. In the very beginning means in the very first chapter he has made certain statements. What are those statements? One statement is, through this Itihasa and Purana. We know that in the very beginning I told you what is called Itihasa. Itihasa is more historical in nature. Purana is something which is mythological in nature. Now we are dealing with the historical thing, that is Itihasa. So through these Itihasas and Puranas, one has to propagate the dharma which is mentioned in the Vedas. That is one particular statement. And another statement which he makes later, not in the very first chapter, but in the later chapter, he makes a statement, dharmecha, arthecha, kamecha, mokshecha. That is, there are 4 pursuits, there are 4 human goals or pursuits. One is, a person wants to be on the side of righteousness. Usually, even a thief, internally he knows what is right and what is wrong. So what is the right? That is what is dharma. A person is supposed to follow the path of dharma, and following the path of dharma, he is supposed to earn his livelihood, he is supposed to fulfill his desires. And earning his livelihood or physical wants and resources and money, wealth, etc., whatever it is, all that is called artha, dharma and artha. Then he is also permitted to enjoy pleasures. He can have a wife, he can have children, he can play, and then he can, physical enjoyments are there, all these physical enjoyments he can have. And all these things should be in the framework of dharma, in the framework of this ethical framework, let us say. A simpler word is ethical framework. So in that ethical framework, a person has to make money. In the same framework, he has to enjoy life. And in that process, when he is in that ethical framework, his mind also is pure and it is fit for further pursuit. Further pursuit means that he is for what is called self-realization. Self-realization is the 4th goal. So dharma, artha, kama, and 4th goal is moksha, that is self-realization. So in all these 4 matters, Vyasa says, this Mahabharata covers all these 4 human goals, and they are covered so exhaustively that what is not covered here is nowhere else in the world. So that is what he says. What is not covered in this Veda, in this Mahabharata, is nowhere else in the world. Yadi hasti tad anyatra. Whatever is here, it is there elsewhere. Yan nehasti na kutrachit. What is not here is nowhere. What is here is there in the world, and what is not here is not there. That means what all is there, all the things which are there in the world relating to these 4 human goals, that is a great debate on dharma, great debate on artha, great debate on kama and moksha. All these 4 things have been told. And while telling that, there is a lot of borrowing from the Vedic literature, what Vedas say and all that. When we say Vedic literature, we should also keep in mind about various auxiliary Vedas which are called Vyakaranam, Chandas, mathematics, all these things, astronomy. Astronomy was one important branch of Vedas, and again what is called etymology, etymological studies, and linguistics, all those things, they were all branches of Vedas. So all these things, a person is supposed to have knowledge. A person who talks about who wants to, or who endeavors to give some talks on this Mahabharata, is supposed to have some knowledge of Vedas. He is supposed to have some knowledge of what is called this astronomy, Vedic astronomy and things like that, and he should have knowledge of medicine. He should have knowledge of various other shastras, including things like medicine, warfare, and political, statecraft, and all these things. And also Dhanurveda, warfare, fieldcraft, and again statecraft, all these things a person is supposed to have. and it is very difficult for one man to have such knowledge. In fact, recently when I was interacting with one doctor, and that doctor was saying that there is one passage here, that one Kali Purusha, we know that this Yuga is called Kali Yuga. So the Kali is supposed to be the personification of evil. That Kali, there is a part of a story which says that Kali entered a particular tree. That particular tree is used in Ayurveda, Kalidruma. So unless I have some knowledge of Ayurveda, I will not know what it is. That Kalidruma is said to be one very, very poisonous tree, and the extract of that particular tree is used for curing cases of poison. And so like that there are so many things. For example, Matsya Yantra, Arjuna, the Pandavas, when they get Draupadi as their wife, they have a test. They are supposed to shoot down a particular fish which was there located. And that Matsya Yantra has got so many features, astronomical features. So unless I have some knowledge of astronomy, there are people who have commented on that Matsya Yantra have mentioned about so many astronomical things there. So unless I have some knowledge of that, I cannot tell all that. So what I am doing now, I am trying to tell you with my limited knowledge of whatever I know about statecraft, whatever I know about what is called warfare, whatever it is, whatever I know about Dharma Shastra, with my meager knowledge I am trying to tell you. In all humility, I am starting this particular explanation of the text. So, and I am following what is called Nilakantha Vyakhya. On this Mahabharata, there is no exhaustive Vyakhya. There is a very, very limited Vyakhya. That is, wherever some explanation is needed, there is a particular small notes, explanatory notes, let us say. It is not exactly a commentary. There are explanatory notes written by a particular writer called Nilakantha. And this Nilakantha probably belonged to some 15th, 16th century, I am not sure. So that Nilakantha's commentary is the only commentary which is available on this. I am not aware of any other. There may be some other commentaries. I have not come across any. And that Nilakantha commentary I do have, and then I am looking into that also, and sometimes I may refer to that also. So this is, with this background, I will start this Adi Parvam. Adi Parva is the first volume. The first volume of Mahabharata is called Adi Parvam. Adi means the beginning. Adi Parva means the very first Parva. Then again the Adi Parva starts with the same prayer, because I have been telling this prayer, Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. So that is the prayer. There is a big meaning for that. I will skip that meaning, because right now if I keep on telling Veda philosophy, then people will be put off. I will tell at some appropriate time, sometime in the middle. So this story opens, and what is the time of this timeline? If you go back in timeline, what is the time of this story? This Mahabharata timeline is about 5,000 years ago. I was telling you that particular age was called Dwapara Yuga. And at the end of this Dwapara Yuga, this battle took place. This is 5,400 years or something like that. Around that time, this battle had taken place. And this story commences after the Mahabharata battle. After the Mahabharata battle, we see the great grandson of Pandavas. So if we keep, the story actually moves back and forth in the Adi Parva, the first 90 or 95 chapters. The first 90 or 95 chapters, the entire Adi Parva has, say about how many chapters? It has got 232 chapters. 232 chapters. The first 90, 95 chapters, they just move back and forth in time. There is a lot of flashback. So if I want to stick to the chronology, I want to stick to this chronology of the story, chronology of the character, the people who are there. So that does not tally with the serial number of the chapters, because here somebody asks a question, you please tell something more about that man. You please tell something more about that. So again we go back in time. So the chapters move back and forth. So this situation is there only in Adi Parva. It is not there in other Parvas. There is no confusion in other Parvas. For a teacher, for anybody who is teaching Mahabharata, the confusion starts in the very beginning, that is Adi Parva only, and not later. So I am following what is called chronology of the personalities, and then I will go to then not following the sequence of the chapters. If I follow the sequence of chapters, it will be very, very difficult for us to know the story. So what I will do is, the first chapter I will see. So in the first chapter, the scene opens in a particular forest called Naimisharanya. The opening scene of this first chapter is a particular place called Naimisharanya. This Naimisharanya was very, very well known. It's supposed to be a very sacred forest, and that is a place which we find in so many Puranas and all that. So many sages who used to stay there. Even now, Naimisharanya people go there. It is a place of pilgrimage. In fact, it is away. It is about 150 kilometers or 130 kilometers from Lucknow, which is the capital of UP. From Lucknow, it is about 130 kilometers. So there, it seems there is still some forest, and people do go there, and then they stay there for some time, and then they do some tapas. Tapas means they do some sadhana, they meditate, do some meditation and come back. So that particular place where some sages, they were conducting a very huge yajna. What is that yajna? Yajna is something which we find in the ancient literature. Yajna is many people, they come together, they chant Vedic mantras, and then there is a huge fireplace, and into that fire they put various offerings, and those offerings, they are called oblations. So they put various offerings into the fire, and then they invoke so many deities, and then they chant mantras and whatnot. So they were performing a great yajna, and that great yajna went on. It was not a small yajna, it went on for a long, long time. So when that yajna was going on, one particular gentleman went there. His name is Ugrashrava. You may forget this name, you need not remember. This particular gentleman, who is essentially a storyteller, he went there. So we'll just take a break and come back. So let us come back. So when that great yajna, for the word yajna, the English word which is normally used is sacrifice. But I wonder whether this sacrifice is a correct word. So maybe that sacrifice word is used because in olden days, during those yajnas, they also used to kill some animals. So probably that is the reason why it was called a yajna. It was called a sacrifice. So tentatively, we will accept that word without disputing it. So for that yajna, lot many people were there, and then to that yajna, one particular person, a well-known storyteller, he went there. Storyteller does not mean somebody who was telling only fiction. A person who used to move around and then know so many things from various places, somewhat like a news reporter now. Not exactly a storyteller, but a type of a balladeer. There used to be some people called Suta, a particular category called Suta. And their specialization was telling so many stories about Puranas and so many Itihasas. Purana is something mythological in nature, I told you. And this Itihasa is something which is historical in nature. So this man goes to a particular place, and then he knows the history of that particular king or kingdom. And he propagates that particular story, because in those days there was no social media, there was no TV, and there were no newspapers. The people had to go, and then people had to talk. People had, suppose something has happened in a particular kingdom, somebody from that kingdom had to go to some other place, and then they had to tell what all was happening. So this gentleman, these are wandering people who just moved around and carried the stories from place to place. So this gentleman named Ugrashrava, he went there, and then he was sitting with them. He asked them, he bowed to them, and then he asked their welfare. Oh, how is it going? How are you going on? And how is your tapas, etc. And then they invited him, because they also knew that this gentleman was a well-known balladeer. And they invited him, and after some time they requested him, oh, you have been moving all around, and you know so many things about what is happening elsewhere. So you please tell us what all you have seen. So then this man starts saying, yes, I am now coming from another great yajna, which was recently performed by a great king called Janamejaya. He just recently performed one particular yajna, and I am coming from that place. And who is this Janamejaya? Janamejaya is the great grandson of Pandavas. So the story starts from that. So this Janamejaya was performing a peculiar yajna. And what is that yajna? He was performing a particular sacrifice by chanting all these mantras and so many things. And then his objective, for every sacrifice there is an objective. Usually the objective is to get some spiritual merit, what is called punyam. We have got two words called punyam and papam. Punyam is some spiritual merit by which we, after death, we go to some heavenly world. So usually that is the thing. But then this, some other times, some yajnas are done to harm others. So this Janamejaya was performing a yajna to kill all the serpents in the world. It is called a Sarpa Yaga. Sarpa is the same word as serpent. Serpent and Sarpa, they are cognate words actually. So the Sarpanti means that which crawls. Serpent is the same, exactly the same etymology. So this Sarpa Yaga or serpent sacrifice, I am just coming from that serpent sacrifice. So what is that serpent sacrifice? Then during that serpent sacrifice, what happened? Whenever these yajnas go on, there are certain interval, time periods. It is not as though all 24 hours they keep on chanting and then all 24 hours they will not be putting offerings. So there is some break time and then there is some lunch time, there is some tea time, something like that. So during those breaks, they used to discuss various things. So during those breaks, they used to tell certain stories. So there again, one particular person, a sage called Vaishampayana. In that, this Vaishampayana's name repeatedly comes in Mahabharata. Vaishampayana Uvacha. So Vaishampayana Uvacha is Vaishampayana told, Janamejaya Uvacha. So the story is in the form of a conversation between Vaishampayana, the sage, and who is a student of Vyasa. Vyasa, you know, in the beginning, I told you who is sage Vyasa. Sage Vyasa is the writer himself. So sage Vyasa is also a character in this. So sage Vyasa's disciple, his student, named Vaishampayana. That Vaishampayana, he is the narrator, and the audience or listener is Janamejaya, and of course in the entire people in that hall, in that yajna. So this Janamejaya was the audience. So that Vaishampayana told the entire story of what happened to that the great grandfathers of this Janamejaya. Janamejaya is the great grandson. His great grandfathers means Pandavas and also Kauravas. What was the battle? What went on? What happened to my great grandfathers? So he was querying. At that time, that Vaishampayana, he was explaining what all has happened. So this entire story is in the form of a small is in the form of a discussion between these two people and a sort of flashback. So that story was heard by this gentleman, Ugrasrava, who came to the other place, other sacrifice. So a person moved from one sacrifice place to another sacrifice place. So in one sacrifice place, he heard the entire story of Mahabharata. And that story he is narrating to some other people here in another sacrifice. So we are now in the second place. So here what happens is, so he tells, yes, I heard that great story of Mahabharata there. And okay, I will tell. Then these rishis also say, okay, you tell what all has happened. Then he starts telling about how, what Vaishampayana was telling there. He is just telling these munis. The muni means the sages. So how does it all start? It all starts with how Vyasa composed after the end of the Mahabharata war. Sage Vyasa was sitting in meditation. And in that meditation, he saw the entire, again, he contemplated on the entire episode, entire story of Mahabharata. Story in the sense, entire events, all the events, what all has happened, what are all the problems, what are all the issues which led to that great war, and the various ethical issues, all those things he contemplated. And he wanted to put it in writing. So Vyasa was like a historian. So Vyasa, he wanted to put it in writing, and he composed it in his own mind, and then he wanted to put it in writing. And in those days, there were no type machines, no computers, nothing, we know. So in those days, they used to write on some palm leaves. There is a tree called Palmyra tree, and those Palmyra trees, they do have long leaves. So they used to cut those leaves and then treat them properly and then make into some sort of material on which they could write. So that is one particular book. Or some other bark of a tree. There used to be either leaves or some bark of a tree in North India. That bark leaves, they were very famous. It is called Bhurja Patra. So Bhurja tree. So they used to cut that bark, and then the bark is sliced and then treated properly, and then it is made into a sort of paper. So those things, if you go to some manuscripts libraries in India, if you go to some manuscripts libraries, you will see many books. For example, in Delhi, there is what is called a manuscripts mission, National Manuscripts Mission, NMM. So if you go there, so there you will find hundreds, thousands and thousands of these books, which are old palm leaf books, and then all these Bhurja Patras. For centuries, they have been lying. They were centuries ago. They were written, and they were all collected. And there are many such things elsewhere. So Vyasa wanted to write. Of course, he was not an expert in writing, probably, or it so happens that some people, if they keep on writing, they will not have that flow. So Vyasa wanted to have a writer. So when he was contemplating like that, what happened? Lord Brahma himself appeared before him. We know that Lord Brahma is the creator. We know that there are three deities, important deities in Indian system. That is Brahma, Vishnu and Ishvara. Brahma is that cosmic function called creation. Vishnu is that cosmic function for sustenance. And Maheshwara or Shiva is the cosmic function for resolution or dissolution of this universe. So Srushti, Sthiti and Laya. So it goes on in a cycle. So this Brahma himself appeared before him, and he told him, yes, I know that you are a great, you are a great rishi, you are a great sage, and you have very nicely composed it in your mind, and you request Lord Ganesha to be the writer. Lord Ganesha will be a very appropriate writer. So Vyasa, he contemplated on Lord Ganesha, and Lord Ganesha also appeared before him. And sage Vyasa requested him, you please be my writer. Then Ganesha put a condition. So you have to tell in such a continuous manner that there should not be any break. There should not be any break. I don't want to break without stopping my pen. You should tell in such a manner that I should not stop my pen. Then Vyasa thought about it. Okay, well, this is a peculiar condition. Okay, let me also put a condition. Then he said, okay, I'll keep on dictating, but you have to understand everything and every word, and then you have to write. You can't write without understanding anything. Then Ganapati also said, yes, okay, fine. Then Vyasa, he deliberately composed certain complicated verses. That is what the legend says, the story says. Okay, if we want to believe totally, we can believe, but it is a nice story, because the very presence of Brahma means, the story, even if it is a story, the presence of Brahma means it has got the authenticity of the Vedas, because Brahma represents the four Vedas. Brahma is that four heads. The four heads of Brahma, they symbolize all the four Vedas. So when we say that Brahma has come, Brahma has blessed him, it means that this has got the blessing of the Vedas. That means it is something which has to do with the Vedas. Then Lord Ganesha is the Lord of all the fields of knowledge. Sarva Vidya, for all the branches of knowledge, they are said to be, Lord Ganesha is said to be the Lord for all the branches of knowledge. So that means this only a person who has got knowledge of all the branches, all the human knowledge in all branches. So only such person can write, can understand all this. So these 2 points very well made. Even if you take it figuratively, we can take this story literally, or we can take it in a figurative manner. So if we take it in a figurative manner, it means this, that is got the sanction of all the four Vedas, and it contains all human knowledge which was available at that particular time. So Lord Ganesha, yes, agreed. Then Vyasa, he can't continuously dictate, that is the problem. So he deliberately composed some complicated, say, verses in between, and there Ganesha had to stop. He had to stop and think. He has to think as to what this gentleman is meaning, whether he is meaning this or that, because Ganesha also, though he is a great scholar, he has to know, he has to ascertain what this particular person is saying. So it seems there are more than 8,000 verses like that. They are called Grantha Granthi. Grantha means a knot. Granthi means a knot. Grantha Granthi means these knots in this entire Grantha. Grantha means text. Granthi means a knot. there are so many knots in this particular text. That means Bharatam and Mahabharata, there are so many tough verses. So, okay, we do come across such things. We'll see as we go through the text, we will see that we find certain verses. What exactly is he saying? So, of course, the explanatory notes by commentators like Nilakanta, they do give some inputs, and we should use our own imagination, and maybe we are off the mark or we are somewhere near the meaning. We do not know, but still we have to see. So, Ganesha, he wrote like that. So, because he was the person who has knowledge of all those things, and because Vyasa has touched on all the branches of knowledge available at that time. So, that is the picture. And then we see certain statements here in the very first shloka, in the very first chapter. I will not read out all the verses because verses are so many. So, he says, Sarvagnopi Ganesho yat kshanam aste vicharayan. Sarvagnopi Ganesha. Though Ganesha was a Sarvagnya. That is, Sarvagnya means he is a very highly learned man. Sarvagnya literally means omniscient. So, we can take that translation also. Or, though Ganesha was highly learned in all the branches of knowledge, even then, yat kshanam aste vicharayan, when Ganesha was when thinking on those lines, then Vyasa could mentally compose some more things. When this man was thinking, then Vyasa used to compose some more and then be ready. By the time he is ready, this man also is ready. So, Tavachakara Vyasopi. So, Shlokan Anyan Bahunapi. So, like that he says. And he says, Ajnana Timirandhasya Lokasya tu Vicheshtataha. This entire text is basically to destroy this darkness called ignorance. Ignorance is compared with darkness. So, this text is like that, something which dispels the darkness of ignorance. So, that is how this entire thing starts, and we will continue tomorrow. About one more line I just wanted to read. The second line I will read tomorrow. So, let us continue later. Harihi Om Tat Sat.